Hey guys! Today we're going to be talking about some of the art techniques that were used during the late Gothic and early Renaissance period of art history. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on gold leafing, egg tempera, gesso, marble sculpture, and fresco. By doing this, we hope to first of all learn how artwork was created during this time period. But more importantly, we hope to grow in our appreciation of it for ourselves. Let's begin with gold leafing. Now, gold leaf is simply gold that has been beaten into extremely thin sheets. This is often 22 karat gold, but it can be other types depending on the artist's intention. Here's an example. As I said, simply a square of extremely thin gold. Now, gold leafing is the method of actually applying this gold leaf to a surface. It's also known as gilding. The traditional technique for gold leafing is known as water gilding, and it goes something like this. First, a gesso is applied to a surface and allowed to dry. Next, a mixture of glue and water is applied over the gesso. On top of this mixture, gold leaf is applied in layers. And at the end, the artist applies finishing touches, known as burnishing, to create a smooth and bright appearance. Now, let's look at some examples of gold leafing. The first is a more modern example. It's the Athena Parthenos in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, this statue is a replica of one that once stood in the actual Parthenon in Athens, Greece. And as you can see, the statue is covered head to toe in gold leaf. The next example is the Basilica di Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome, Italy. And this is one we should see in our time, so you should be able to examine it for yourself. But here, this picture doesn't do it justice, but the ceiling is covered with gold leaf, as are many other parts of this basilica. The next is St. John's Co-Cathedral in Valletta, Malta. And again, we see another example of gold leaf being applied throughout a cathedral. Now let's turn it over to Alexis.
Hi guys, my name is Alexis, and I'm going to be talking to you about a few different artistic techniques today. The first one is egg tempera. Egg tempera is actually a mode of painting in which the artist uses egg yolk as the binding agent rather than oil or acrylic. So the artist will take the egg, crack it open, and separate the egg yolk from the egg sac and the egg white. While the artist uses this medium of painting, the egg dries very quickly and it doesn't permit the artist to make mistakes. The process is often slow and exacting because accuracy is a necessity at every stage in the painting process. As you will see in these next few paintings by Leonardo da Vinci, the colors are very washed out and pale. They're not super vibrant like you would see with oil or with acrylic paint. So the next technique that I'd like to talk to you guys about is gesso. Now, gesso isn't a medium of painting. It's actually a way to prepare a surface for the application of paint. It is a primer that is made from fine plaster and mixed with glue, and it prevents the absorption of acrylic and oil paint on untreated wood panels and cloth canvases. Artists often use gesso to create a completely smooth surface, or they can use it to create a three-dimensional texture. So if you've ever seen an oil painting where it looks like the paint is coming drastically off the canvas by a few inches, that is actually the application of gesso covered in a painting pigment. In these next few photos, you will see that gesso was used to create a flat surface for the artist. On the left, this is a painting called Saint Martin of Tours, and if this painting wasn't cracked in aging, we would see that it was meant to be depicted on a flat surface. As goes the painting on the right, which is called The Entry into Jerusalem, and this painting is very two-dimensional and it is not meant to be texturized. Whereas in these next two photos, both by G.C. Myers, we see that the artist has used a gessoing technique to create an abstract sunset for the viewer of the painting.
The next piece of art we'll be discussing is marble structure. The marble structure is the art of creating three-dimensional forms from marble. A marble sculpture can be carved with or without a model. It is dependent on the artist. If you do not use a model, there are, however, 4 steps. The first step is roughing out, which is using a point chisel to pitch away portions of large unwanted stone. The second step is refining the sculpture, using tooth chisels or a claw chisel, and this adds texture by creating parallel lines within the stone. After the first two steps, there is a general structure to the stone. And in the third step, rasps and rifflers are used to enhance the shape into its final form. This creates details. A riffler is smaller than a rasp and creates even finer details, such as folds of clothing or locks of hair. The final step is polishing, which can be broken down into two different steps. The first step is using sandpaper or sandcloth to polish. The second step is using emery, a stone that is harder and rougher than the sculpture, to finish the process. Polishing brings out the color, reveals pattern, and adds sheen to the sculpture. An example of a famous marble structure is the David, created between 1508 and 1504 by Michelangelo. The statue is located at the Galleria dell'Accademia in Florence, Italy. This sculpture has a lot of detail, and some of that detail can be seen especially in the face of David, specifically in his eyes, which are pointed to Rome. The next art technique that we will be discussing is fresco. Fresco is a method of painting using water-based pigment on freshly applied plaster. The colors used penetrate the plaster and become fixed as it dries. The color is made by grinding dry powder pigment in pure water. Fresco is usually seen on walls and ceilings, and in order to complete a large artwork, the plaster must be put down in parts, which could take several days. A famous example of a fresco painting is the Sistine Chapel ceiling, painted by Michelangelo between 1508 and 1512. The Sistine Chapel is located in the country of Italy, specifically in the Vatican City. Because this is a fresco painting and because of the massive size of the artwork, Michelangelo laid out a new section every day, which is called a giornata. If we look closely at the ceiling, we can see where one day began and one day ended, based off of the cracks in between.
Well, that's all for today, guys. Now you know a little bit more about the art techniques used during the late Gothic and early Renaissance period. I hope you found this video helpful. Have a nice day.